me a moment real quick. All right. So good afternoon, y'all. My name is Joshua Lassero, president of ACM-W. And in honor of Women in STEM Month, my organization and I have decided to host a Women in STEM panel to not only honor this community, but also provide an environment in which these students can share their experiences to empower others. So if this is your first time joining our organization, you might be wondering, what exactly is ACM-W? ACM-W stands for the Association for Computing Machinery Women's Chapter. This chapter was created to be the women's chapter of ACM in an effort to provide a pointed spotlight on one of the gender minority groups. However, we recognize our name is not a requirement for entry, but as a focus and requirement from where the creation of this chapter stemmed from. Our main focus surrounds on creating open opportunities for marginalized communities to gain experience, network, socialize, learn, and grow outside of the classroom in all fields of technology and computing. This year, we want to provide opportunities to women and minorities at UTSA regardless of a computer science background. So if this is your first time tuning in, I just want to say welcome, thank you all for coming. And to reiterate, to be a part of our organization, you don't have to have any computer science experience. We just want to create an inclusive environment for everyone to grow and learn along the way. So if you would like to become a member, I highly encourage y'all to go ahead and scan this QR code. Membership is absolutely free, and by becoming a member, you will be eligible for free swag, giveaways, and internship opportunities. But for everyone who already is a member, I encourage y'all to go ahead and scan in that QR code so y'all can sign in, and we can keep track of the events that y'all have been coming into. But as y'all are scanning in these QR codes, I will be going over some upcoming events. So tomorrow, actually, we're going to be having a League of Legends night. So I believe this is a tournament style competition. So if you have experience or don't have any experience with League of Legends, come and make new friends in our tournament. The tournament is going to start at 7 p.m. and the location for this will be on our ACM Discord and in person in the NPB room 467. On March 7th, we will be having our Intro to Tech meeting, which I believe revolves around machine learning from 2 to 3 p.m. And that's going to be in the Mesquite room. And then in exactly 1 week, at this exact time, in the same building or in the same room, we're going to have a Black Students in Computer Science panel. So if you enjoy, or if you do happen to enjoy this panel, I highly encourage y'all to attend the meeting for next week. And meetings like this are just a small glimpse of what ACM-W is really about. So I hope to see y'all there as well. Now, additionally, if you would like to become a junior officer, gain experience, I highly encourage y'all to scan this QR code as well. So by shadowing an officer, you will be able to expand your resume and make an impact here at San Antonio with your peers and also the community of San Antonio. No experience is required, so if you're not even a STEM major, if you're not even a computer science major, we still encourage y'all to apply. Now, additionally, Rowdy Hacks is coming up. This event will be taking on March 26th to the 27th. So Rowdy Hacks is our San Antonio hackathon, and we will be having a hackathon. So essentially what a hackathon is a 24-hour coding competition in which students, can create their own website, can make a hardware device, they can make their own video game with absolutely no experience required. So the only requirement is just to have a willingness to learn. But yeah, aside from this, we're going to go ahead and get started soon. So I'm going to ask the panelists to come and take a seat. And I'll pass down to Mike to Izzy as well.
Well, hello everyone. Like Josh said, my name is Izzy. I'm the ACM-W Vice President. And we're going to go ahead. I'm going to ask each one of y'all to introduce yourself, your name, major, current, and or previous leadership experience, and research skills.
Hi everyone, I'm Elizabeth De Leon. I am currently a junior in civil engineering, and I am the current president of ASCE.
Hi everyone, my name is Haley Schmidt. I'm an environmental science major, and I'm a graduating senior as well. I'm the secretary/treasurer for the Wildlife Society here on campus, and I'm also an intern with NASA's Develop National Program.
Hi everyone, my name is Janelle Millison. I'm a junior computer science major with a concentration in data science. I'm the current president for the Association for Computing Machinery student chapter here at UTSA, and I am a returning intern this summer to Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Laboratory with their AI research group.
Okay. My name is Jessica Seigle. I'm a sophomore in biomedical engineering with a minor in information systems. I'm currently doing research in Dr. Hood's lab. I volunteer / teach classes at Makerspace. I'm the public relations chair of NSBE, National Societies of Black Engineer, and I'm currently the sophomore representative for College of Engineering and Integrated Design Student Council.
Hi, I'm Sherry. I'm the Vice President of the Texas Society of Professional Engineers. I'm a researcher at a tissue engineering lab here, and I'm a peer mentor. I'm a junior biomedical engineer.
Okay, so who or what got you interested in STEM in the first place?
I don't think there's like a specific something that made me interested in STEM. I've been told that I knew how to do algebra at 3 years old. I just liked the challenge, the puzzle, and then everybody else was super impressed, so it kind of kept me going.
My parents, it was kind of STEM or nothing, but I really do enjoy it, don't get me wrong. I think that's it. And I went to a charter school, so we focus a lot on STEM in general, engineering, and researching just in my high school. So yeah.
Yeah, mine actually kind of comes from school as well, but it was middle school, so I took a technology class for the first time. And this was something very basic. It was like learning how to type. We did some programming in Scratch, you know, the little drag and drop blocks for anyone familiar. And I really had a blast in that class, and I actually had a female teacher for that class. So that was super inspiring to see someone who looked like me teaching this technology class. And so I took all of her classes. I TA'd for her class, which in middle school was not a big deal. You know, it's not like a TA now. But that's what really got me interested in tech. And then in high school, I kind of revisited it senior year as, oh, hey, I liked that one since 7th grade. And it was my one class that I really struggled in, that I was not good at all. And so it was something that I knew that I liked, and I liked the challenge of it. So that's kind of how I ended up here.
Yeah, I had kind of a late start to STEM. Up until right before I applied to UTSA, I was like dead set on being a professional musician. And so I signed up for environmental science kind of on a whim, just kind of going off the lines of, well, I like animals, I like plants, and I like nature. So I just signed up for it and wanted to see where it was going to take me. And I ended up absolutely loving it. My first semester at UTSA, I took a botany class and just absolutely like nerded out. Like it was just the greatest thing ever. And after my first semester, I knew I made the right choice, and so I kept sticking with it. And here I am now, 4 years later, and I am so happy that I switched because this isn't something I ever saw myself really doing.
I like to break things and see how they work, and so I got taught how to fix them, and that kind of started me on just engineering. And then in high school, I did a technology and engineering magnet school, so that kind of just solidified my path.
Thank you. What advice would you give someone who has imposter syndrome?
Oh. We've all been through it. I know I still have my moments, but looking at it from someone's outside perspective, it's just about your experience. As you go through something, you get over that imposter syndrome, and someone else will say, hey, like, how did you do it? It's just about getting through it and just asking questions and figuring it out. I think we all can relate to it.
Definitely. I know I struggle with this a lot too. For me, I would recommend somebody who's struggling with imposter syndrome to just at first, just really like embrace the feeling of that uncomfortableness. Because a lot of times that gap, if there really is a gap, sometimes we imagine that we are lesser than the people around us. But if there truly is a gap, just to really kind of mull it over and think about how that gap between where you're at and where the people that you want to be like are at, how that's really an opportunity for growth. And as uncomfortable as that may feel, just understanding that if you're not growing, you're not getting better. So just really kind of chilling out for a second and really feeling those feelings, I think is really important. As long as you acknowledge that you are growing through this and it's not a negative thing to want to better yourself.
I 100% agree with what you said about the potential for growth. Looking back on the time that, I felt like the most of like an imposter was my first undergraduate research experience. But now I look back on that experience and I realize that's where I learned the most and that's where I grew the most. And that's, kind of what jump started my career. So I definitely agree with that growth component. And to go a little bit beyond that too, if you're not learning and you're not growing and you're not in an environment where you're at least a little bit uncertain, then maybe that's not the environment for you, right? Because somebody's going to know more than you in almost every subject every time, and somebody's going to know less than you. And if you're surrounding yourself with people in an environment where you know everything and there's nothing for you to learn, maybe it's time to change that environment. But yeah, so and knowing that you don't know everything, that is the greatest form of knowledge, in my opinion, that you can have. If you don't think you're an imposter at all because you know everything and you're a master, then I would probably take a look back and explore your options a little bit more, because there's always going to be something out there that you don't know, and having the courage to admit that and ask questions and kind of power through that imposter syndrome through asking questions, I think is probably one of the greatest things that you can do.
I think there's always uncertainty stepping into like a different space that you've been in for like what you know. It could be the change from high school to college, which was honestly what was the biggest like shaky thing for me, and then getting to my first research lab with Dr. Gambini, and getting positions that, in my opinion, I felt like I still wasn't like completely prepared for. And being uncertain means for me, you're definitely taking the right path. You have to understand that like in every like situation that you put yourself, at least new situation that you put yourself in, it's not going to be the most comfortable. And when you're asking questions and you're always learning things and there's always something for you to learn, you can be rest assured that like at least as of right now, you are in that right path. And that uncertainty will always be there no matter which step you take. So yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, I feel a little imposter syndrome just being on this panel. But big advice would be to really find pride in your journey, like in the highs and the lows. I remember like I failed calculus, I had to retake OChem, retook EA, and as an engineer, that was really hard. I was like, wow, I don't belong here. Like those are all the big classes. I was like, calculus is the foundation of an engineer's life. Like, how could I fail that? But looking back, just being able to overcome that and be at the same like level as my peers, it's like I'm as equal as all of y'all. Not gonna say I'm better, but I like deserve to be here. And like I've had internships, I've had research experience. So even if you have lows, really know that they really make the end so much more worth it.
Have you ever had a negative experience being a woman in STEM? And if you did, how did you overcome that experience?
I told Jessica about this. My negative experience was during AIS. My AIS was very engineering based, and in that class there was a big ratio difference in the men and women ratio, and then so our professor did a thing where he grouped men and women kind of equally. He spread us all out. So I was in a group with two other guys, and to give you some insight on how our projects worked, one of the assignments was to code a song. And the song we coded was called I Want to Die. And you can tell who did not have a say in what song we were going to be coding. But I also kind of figured out like I should be sitting in the middle because whenever I sat on the side, the guys would just be like, hey, blah, 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 blah. And I'd be like, hey, I'm here. Like, let's include me in the things. And then we kind of like communicated. And then they started like including me on things. And then toward the end, we worked on a couple projects together. It worked out. And I think we made the most of it.
So for me, it was when I first started volunteering in Makerspace and just like helping people with like finding things. I would always, I remember very clearly, it was me and one of the other people that volunteered there. And whenever I said something or like made, I don't say a suggestion, I would always get questioned like questioned to the very like T of the idea. When I realized that the other person, my male counterpart, would never get questioned, it would always be like yes and go. And so I don't know, I took it as a stride. Like after a while, I kind of like realized it's not a me thing. And that was definitely, it took me a while to like really, at first I was really thinking about like not coming to Makerspace anymore because it was really annoying to always get questioned more than like my other counterparts. But yeah, I was able to overcome it. So
Yeah, I can definitely relate to the whole like group project or being a little bit more questioned at the onset. For me, one moment was trying to put on sort of events to empower women in STEM and marginalized genders. And some of like the feedback or trying to convince people that that's important. I didn't realize that I needed to explain that it's an issue if we have 5 women in a class and there's like 60 guys, that hey, maybe there's something going on behind the scenes there. And so kind of taking a step back and realizing that not everybody sees it the same way, especially if you walk into a room and a lot of people look like you might not notice that there's not so many people who don't look like you. And so from my experience, kind of having to go through and explain why that's important, and why an event like this is valid, and even kind of in some instances, rare as they are, kind of fend off comments that are like, this is horrible that you're doing this, like why can't we include everybody, and trying to clarify that message of, hey, we are trying to include everybody by doing events like these. So I think I realized a lot more of it when I became kind of like an organizer and things like that, having those moments where people don't necessarily see the point of more inclusivity in STEM and in tech. That was definitely a challenge for me, but I, am still working to kind of overcome that by, taking a step back and seeing it from other people's perspectives too, because as a white woman, when I walk into a room, I need to hold myself accountable as well to make sure that like there are equal POC counterparts as well. So I'm kind of learning more how to step outside of myself in that respect, to kind of overcome that, and then also help other people overcome that.
Yeah, so I might have a bit of a different experience being from environmental science, but a big part of my study is fieldwork. And so, for example, last summer I was doing an internship that was pretty field heavy. And on one of our trips out, we were spending 2 weeks in the Sierra Nevada, which is pretty remote. And we were out there with my mentor, who was male, and my field partner, who was also female. And just something that we noticed was that there must have not been either a woman helping to plan or having been consulted, because there were a few things that were not accounted for that we ran into. Like small things, like for example, my field partner and I both had fairly long hair, and my mentor was bald. So he hadn't really accounted for that we might want to wash our hair at some point, because that's uncomfortable to have dirty hair. Or other things, like at one point, my field partner and I both had our periods, and that had not been accounted for, so there was no way to really deal with that while we were out there in the woods. And that's something that you don't really think about if that's not something you experience. So thankfully, there was a woman from the Forest Service who had joined us for a couple of days, so we were able to ask her, what do we do in this situation? But just things like that, like not having your needs accounted for can be kind of difficult if you're not part of the majority who's doing the planning and the logistics.
I think I've been pretty lucky in that regard to not have too bad of an experience with this. As an organization, my experience to leadership was a complete 180 from the leadership before mine. It was all guys in our organization, and then we took over for all girls, and then realized that we completely just overpowered. So we try to include the guys as much as we can. But now you see it from their perspective when it's only girls. We only think one way, guys think the other way. So it's a lot about the communication aspect, because I think we're all fairly aware of the issues that we have for ourselves. And once we get into a situation where we have to communicate, that's when the issues present themselves and we can work together to resolve them.
Thank you so much for sharing, everyone. I'm going to turn it to the audience. Does anyone have any questions right now that they want to ask our panelists?
Yeah, what advice would you give to the student who's who wants to become a STEM major but doesn't know if STEM is the right fit for them?
Josh just asked advice for a student that wants to become a STEM major but is not sure if.
So you never know until you try. One thing that I've learned through my internship is even if I don't like it, I'll attempt it once, because that way I know if I like it or not. If I don't like it, I kind of just get through it that one little time and then communicate that I don't like it, and they'll help you kind of navigate that. And talking to peers, experience, taking a class, looking it up, doing some research will probably help out to someone that's not aware or hasn't been exposed to something yet.
I would take a look online, because one thing I didn't realize until fairly recently is that STEM does not have to be this sort of like cold, sterile box of just terminology and numbers, right? There's definitely a whole lot of other aspects of STEM that I think a lot of people don't realize. For example, I saw this guy online that teaches the basics of coding using metaphors about like makeup, and he does it while he's in drag, and that's something you wouldn't have seen like 10 years ago. And so I don't think a lot of people realize that like there's not just one look to STEM, there's a lot of different options. So I would recommend looking at different things that are out there.
I wholeheartedly agree. Especially with, looking at your options and then don't knock it till you try it. But I will say that for people interested in STEM, I hear a lot, especially in computer science, like, why are you into computer science? And people say for the money, which is something else that comes along with STEM. I would take a step back at that point and look at, hey, I'm going to be doing this thing usually 40 hours a week for the rest of my life. Is that worth it to me? I would look for your passion first and see what I'm genuinely interested in. Go out and find people that maybe have a YouTube channel or something that can teach you a little bit about maybe whatever topic in STEM you're interested in, or maybe go and shadow somebody or do something like that. Get kind of a little bit of that experience before just looking at the statistics or the numbers, because ultimately, whatever you decide to do is going to be kind of your life's path. I mean, and that can change, and that's fine. But I would encourage you to look beyond superficial reasons that I hear a lot.
So I feel like one way, is definitely research on the topic. I feel like most people, after they take like your first chemistry class, they're like, yeah, this is not for me. That's C. So I think you have to understand that like that one class does not define the entire like degree plan. Even for me taking BME or me, like even for my minor, I'm gonna be very honest, there's parts of like coding that I do not enjoy, and there's definitely some of the classes that I do not enjoy. And of course there's gonna be parts you don't enjoy. But I feel like if you use that one bad experience that you had from that one class, from chemistry, from calculus, to define the entire major, it's gonna definitely like close so many doors. And also looking at organizations, a lot of them don't require you to be in the same major or be in that major for you to join. So joining them and just like looking at like some of the activities that they have is definitely a way for you to explore more about STEM.
Yeah, like everyone said, definitely try out different things. I mean, Josh, you're a great example of someone who's participated in everything, like the trebuchet building, the medical minkathon, the hackathon, like any competition there is, like go and explore it, try it out, and find something that's fascinating to you, just so that even if it does get hard, that you'll keep on doing it. I liked coding for a bit, but I found it boring. That's why I didn't want to do it. But B&B, I shouldn't be saying it here, but it's the truth. But for B&B, no matter how hard it got, it was always fascinating to me. And I was like, this is what I want to do. This is the degree I really want.
Any other questions from the audience?
So it sounds like a lot of y'all have already had internships or you're in like some sort of research thing. How did you guys find it? Like I know that you guys promote a lot of stuff I've seen on your pages, but for you personally, how did you choose the thing that you wanted to do? Did you just jump into it without knowing it? And of course, talk about the research too, but you guys just jump into it.
So the question that was just asked is, how did you find these opportunities?
Internships wise, I just applied to anything and everything I found interesting. To be honest, I remember when I got the email, I was like, dude, I don't even remember applying to this. But it was like called the Center of Research on Addiction and Brain Health, and I was like, sciencey enough, sounds fascinating, I'll do it. Research wise, I'm in Dr. Rathbone's lab. I've been bothering him about it since freshman year. I have a fascination with diabetes, and his research was on diabetes. So when I first met him, I was like, oh, that's super fascinating. Like your lab, one day I'll be there. And then fast forward like 2 years, I'm there now.
So for me, so I'm gonna be very honest. So I knew I'm gonna speak mainly about research because that's what I have the most experience in right now. Freshman year, I'm a sophomore, so it just like a year ago maybe. I call it cold emailing every VME professor, at least the ones that sound interesting to me. Don't get me wrong. Read some of their papers of what like interests me. I know I want to do orthopedic, deal with bones. Like that's the general gist of like what I wanted to do. And so I emailed Dr. Gambini, a few other professors. Don't get me wrong, some of them did not respond to me. I'm still hurt. But but so the one Dr. Gambini who did respond to me, it was like the step forward in the right direction. And now I'm in Dr. Hood's lab, and I've helped publish papers and things like that. And even with internships, like my organization, honestly, that's how I started National Society of Black Engineer. That's how I started applying. I wasn't really looking at it from any standpoint, but like once you've like met, gone to a few organizations, at least gone to a few meetings, met a few recruiters, you definitely get interested because there's definitely different aspects to a company than like what you see or what is advertised. So yeah.
Yeah, so as far as opportunities, I found a lot through, like Jessica said, organizations. That's actually how I found, ACM is how I found my first undergraduate research experience. And to your point where you said, hey, well, you know what you're interested in now, but how did you, find that was the opportunity for you or things like that is, I didn't know at first. I was originally a cybersecurity major, and I took that direction, and I was about to run in it, and then I looked at the classes, and I was like, oh no, this is not what I want to do. So I took a different opportunity to, become a computer science major, and I ran in that direction. And then I thought, oh, maybe still include some sort of cybersecurity in it. But then I ran in the direction of deep learning and machine learning, and that's kind of what stuck. But I would say that it's a lot about the connections and the passion that you can show for anything that you like to do. So if you find a direction that you're interested in, I say run in it. Go and look at undergraduate research opportunities are, in my opinion, a great first step because a lot of the time they look for your good grades and a personal statement. They don't look for any, previous internship experience and things like that. And so that's a great, first kind of foot in the door. But ultimately with the opportunities, you don't really know, what exactly that's going to look like till you're in it. So show your interest, reach out to those people who are in a spot that, maybe you would like to be in one day, and then take that and run with it as far as you can. And then if you have to zag and go in a different direction, just keep going for it, is my opinion.
Yeah, I second what they said about getting involved and just seeing what's out there. Something else I found really helpful is making an effort to pay attention to the things around you. Like all of the little papers that people tape to the walls or the cork boards that have things pinned to them. Like take a moment to really look at them and read what's on those papers. You'd be surprised the opportunities that you can see that are posted right there. Because I know I, for a long time, would just kind of tune out and just go to class, do the class, go back home, and not look at anything on the walls as I'm walking around. So I found a lot of really great stuff on just being posted, or even virtually too. If you're getting emails from your advisor or professor about different opportunities, like actually read the email. Because it gets really easy to just kind of like, oh, all right, well, I'll read that later, and then you never look at it again. So just if you're looking for opportunities, being mindful of that and really paying attention to everything that's around you, because you might find something really interesting. But that's what I found. And also just some of the more like more well-known ones, like using Handshake or LinkedIn. I know that they're really heavily trafficked sites, but there's a lot of really good stuff on there as well.
No, I definitely agree with Handshake and LinkedIn. Unfortunately, I didn't use them at all when I actually got my internship. I would recommend if you join an org or even if you're on campus, network with your peers that are a few years older than you because they're currently at internship. They already went through this process and they know all the tips and tricks on how to get there. For my internship in particular, I fully am going to plug my organization. One of the officers recommended me to replace him as an intern once he graduated because he liked my personality and saw my work ethic. I've been there for a year with them now, so it worked out in that regard. I applied during finals, so I don't recommend you do that, but everything else, it's about your willingness to try and to work for what you want. There's always opportunities, and just you being here at this meeting already shows that you're willing to learn and expand what you can do. So good luck to you.
Thank you. That's really nice. Our next question is, what is the greatest challenge you have encountered as a woman in STEM?
As a woman in STEM, I can definitely say that one of the challenges is respecting myself. You come in with this mindset that you're a minority, but you're as equal as anyone else here, and everyone's still learning. You're at the same level. Definitely back to the imposter syndrome question. It plays a part in it, but you're gonna get through it. It's about just starting off your journey, just speaking out, getting confident, and just maturing and realizing what you can and can't do and improving yourself is probably one of the biggest challenges.
I think the greatest challenge that I've had to overcome is just like filtering out a lot of really bad advice, usually unsolicited bad advice. Like just last weekend, I was having a conversation with someone who's in my field, a woman actually who's in my field, and she's an older lady, and I was talking to her about how I'm worried about my future. I'm graduating soon. I don't know what's next. Like what is there to look forward to, in this field? And what she told me was really discouraging. She was telling me how most women, it doesn't matter anyway, because you're just going to get married and have children and leave the workforce anyway. So it doesn't really matter. So don't worry about it. And that's awful advice. So and I get the feeling that she wouldn't have told me that if I were a man. And so just really digging through a lot of that advice, even if it comes from a good place, just remembering like, even though I am female, it is not my duty on this planet to just reproduce. And just, spreading that along to other people too, because I'm sure that there are other female students who, if they would have been told that, would have been just absolutely discouraged and just believed that and went with it. So yeah, just shifting through a lot of bad advice.
I would say probably figuring out kind of how my personality and how I approach things kind of fits in with my field a little bit. I know that computer science, I've had some discussions, it kind of lacks this like idea of femininity, of like, the more kind of like not caring, but a little bit more of that like female energy, a little bit more of like the caringness, a little bit more of the maybe like soft spoken. When I talk to some of my peers, it comes a lot across a lot of like, oh, you should do this, or I know this, and all of that stuff. And that's not necessarily my style. I'm more kind of a laid back person, to where, if you come to me for something, like, sure, I'll answer or whatever, but I'm a little bit more passive, right, rather than assertive. And so I found that kind of not necessarily comparing myself to, other people or how other people go about things, but rather comparing myself to versions of my past self. So I started to think of myself as, like a pushover because I wasn't as assertive as other people in my field. But then I realized the people who I'm comparing myself to, they have a lot different experience than I do and have a lot different way of going about things. And so trying to find how to fit your personality into a field that maybe does not vibe as well with your personality, or maybe that's not represented as much, and still kind of succeeding is one of the challenges that I'm still trying to figure out, how I can still be true to myself and true to how I like to approach things, while also still taking into account that that's not maybe the popular way to go about things. And I think that that can be said for a lot of minority groups, maybe something that you have learned or some style that you have doesn't go with what's popular in a certain field. But staying true to yourself and looking at your growth and not comparing that to necessarily everybody else who might have, different experiences than you or a different way of going about things, is really kind of what's helping me overcome that right now and figuring out how my personality and how the traits that I have that are, widely, I would consider kind of feminine, fit into tech.
So for me, there's definitely, I think, a balance that I sometimes lack. For me, it's always more work than like play. Like my schedule starts at 6 a.m. and I don't get back like into my room until 10, 11 on a good day. So it's like work, 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 and the weekend. By the time I'm like, oh, I'm exhausted. And so finding a good balance between you, because you are gonna burn out, like no doubt about it. Your schedule is that packed. Like I've learned, still learning how to like, find a good balance between always feeling like I have to be doing something productive and like actually resting. So yeah.
One of the challenges that I found was the lack of female like mentors in engineering. I really like one time I was talking to my parents and I was like, can we really not think of any like engineers or female engineers that I can talk to and get advice from? And then that's kind of the reason why I'm a peer mentor. I have like such a passion for mentoring. I started like a mentorship program at my old high school. I think it's such a like important thing to serve as a mentor to other people and to really encourage others, despite how hard it is, and sharing your story, to encourage them to like pursue careers in STEM and engineering and stuff.
As a leader of an organization, what do you hope to promote?
I really try to promote inclusivity. So whenever I see somebody who's not speaking as much, I try to go the extra mile and be like, hey, you, so what do you have to say about this? And I've been called out for that. I actually had a meeting last week and they're like, Sherry, why do you always pick on me? And I'm like, I'm not picking on you. You're just quiet and I would really appreciate hearing your opinion. And I think in the long run, inclusivity is really important.
I think one thing I try to promote is like just trying things. I think for me, I'm the public relations chair of NESB. So it definitely involves a lot of like reaching out and getting people to come to things. I think that's in my way I've seen it. For me, that's how I got started with like my academic career outside of just like classes, is just getting involved in things or going to meetings. That's how I met recruiters. That's how I got like different things that I have. That's how I got it. And so trying to get people into the same, like, to do things, like even if you don't like it, just come out and meet people and gain that I would say connection with other people, because they'll lead you into things that you don't know about. They're older than you for a lot of times. They're older than you, or they've already done this before. So the first step is to come out and to experience it and to talk to people. And so that is what I'm trying to promote.
I would have to agree with the statement on inclusivity. That's definitely something that I'm very passionate about within like this organization in general. Whether that's inclusivity based on your experience level, because I remember being a freshman and not knowing what was going on too, and so I'm trying to create opportunities for those people, and then also trying to create opportunities for people who are looking for those serious, professional development things because they're going into industry, but also being inclusive of marginalized groups. So yeah, I would definitely say inclusivity and just kind of empowering people to take that next step, maybe being that little like push behind them that says, hey, yeah, go do this, even when they're uncertain about it, because I know that I definitely had people do that for me. And if they didn't, I don't know if I would kind of be where I am today. So through the organizations that I'm involved in, I want to promote, inclusivity, but also, encouraging people to take that little extra step for themselves and being their cheerleader on the way.
Yeah, definitely. I can really resonate with the inclusivity bit. As a officer for the Wildlife Society, we're really big on bringing in marginalized groups as well, because wildlife is such a white male dominated industry. It's a lot of hunting and fishing type stuff. And so we've been working really hard to have events that bring in people from different backgrounds. So if we're having a women in wildlife panel, or bringing in guest speakers who can talk about what it's like to be a person of color in the industry, or figuring out events that are accessible to people even if they have different physical disabilities and can't go hiking for 10 miles. Just figuring out ways that we can make our club more accessible to people regardless of their background or their ability. Because a lot of that I think is forgotten in this field. So we really try to make an effort to make things easier for people to experience.
I definitely agree with all of y'all's positions. For our organization, what I kind of promote is just people in general. I know that I can work on my inclusivity and other perspectives just because I haven't been exposed to it as much. But we are civil engineering adjacent is my best way to put it. If you're interested in any component or just want to meet new people, you're more than welcome to participate with that. We bring in people from every type of background, whoever wants to show up and speak to students, to maybe from just be positive influences on our students, and just give students the opportunity to connect with each other. And over the pandemic, I know I didn't know many people in any of my classes, so this is definitely a way to build my network, I guess.
What do you plan to do with your degree? What are your career options?
So for my degree, it is a broad range and it includes different fields, and I can specialize in whatever I want. I still haven't gotten into those courses yet, but I'm planning to do water resources and go into public infrastructure.
Yeah, so I'm still trying to figure this out as a upcoming graduate. There's a lot of different ways that you can take environmental science. You can take it more of the biology route and go into stuff with ecology, or more of a more techie side of things if you want to go into remote sensing or different jobs with lots of data, usually like involving climate change. And that's something I'm really hoping to get into, is some work with climate change. And with my current internship that I'm doing, I've been doing a lot of work using remote sensing, and I find it fascinating. And I can't believe it took me 4 years to figure that out. So I'm hoping maybe I can continue with that, or something related, whether it's with GIS or some other sort of mapping application. Yeah, there's a lot of different ways you can take it.
So after graduation or after this degree, I'm thinking of going to graduate school. Currently trying to work out PhD or master's, but the goal is to do machine learning and deep learning research to solve some critical problems. Climate change is actually, one of those, or towards, I guess I should say, contribute towards solving one of them. Those are giant problems. But yeah, and then also, kind of health or computer vision applications is definitely something that I'm really passionate about. And so one day I hope to either, work in a lab or even have a lab of my own and be able to, get those undergraduates who are at their first undergraduate research experience and, kind of pay it forward would be the ultimate goal, to work in a lab like that.
So there's a few different paths I've explored and am thinking about. There is the MD route, either MD PhD, there's MD Masters, so many like in that MD route. There's also industry, two sides, industry side, you can go into medical device, either helping build it, test it, so many things, even cars, the seatbelts, that's considered a medical ish innovation. But I know someone who went into cars, like seatbelts and things like that, and airbags. And so for me, still a sophomore, but I'm thinking of applying to a MD PhD. That's one of my options. I also want to be able to open my own research and innovation. So making medical devices, testing medical devices. Yeah.
Similar to Jessica, I was pre-med, but after finishing all those requirements and shadowing, I no longer want to be a doctor. but you got it. But I think grad school is on the table and industry is on the table. Jessica kind of already mentioned you can go into biomechanics, working with prosthetics, or you can do what I'm doing in the research lab, which is cellular and tissue engineering. I really like it. We're creating skeletal muscle models. And it's crazy to think in a dish that I'm basically building muscles, which is really fascinating to me, and I might just keep pursuing that.
Okay, so that was the end of our questions. Does the audience have any more questions you'd like to ask?
I have one. Let's see if I can make this make sense. So I'm an officer for an organization on campus, and the majority of our officers are going to be graduating pretty soon. And when I talk to freshmen and sophomores, we, as an organization, we really want to focus on getting women to run as officers, because it is a very male-dominated area that our organization is focused on. So when talking to women, especially maybe freshmen or sophomores, is there a way that I can make them feel like they're included, and a way to make it seem like I'm not asking them to be officers because they're women, but does that make sense?
So just to repeat the question, it's how to include and convince females who are freshmen, sophomores to be officers without making it only because they're women.
I guess don't mention the fact that I'm reaching out to you because you're a woman. Just say like, hey, I mean, for my org, we recently did this. We realized, a lot of us older people are graduating and we don't want the org to disappear. So, like last semester, we just reached out to a couple undergrads and they happen to be, underclassmen, they happen to be women, but honestly, just reaching out to people and saying like, hey, are you interested in being an officer? And if you know people who know people, that's how we did it kind of. Like we knew officers, and we were like, hey, do you have any recommendations for underclassmen that we can reach out to? And it was more like specifically asking certain people rather than just telling a lot of people and no one applying. It was doing that like personally. Like I would like to see you run. I think Janelle mentioned like empowering people. So if you really go up to them and say, hey, I'd like you for you to run, I'm pretty sure they'd appreciate that.
Same thing as her. I think a route is definitely like nominating people or having other people nominate people. Like yes, you do want to like act. I won't say act, but like include more women. But you don't want it to seem like we're only asking you because you're a woman and you would seem great to our diversity quota, which I feel like some companies still don't get. When you mention like women, it's like, oh, it's like completely separate, like singling us out. And for a lot of times, you can tell if it's like genuine. I think that's what it is. You can tell if it's genuine or just because like you need to fill something or you need someone on the board. So just reaching out is definitely a step in the right direction. Yeah.
Yeah, so I would say, because so you mentioned the like problem now is like, a lot of people are graduating, you don't have like a lot of women in the club. Like I feel like the initial, kind of draws if, I go to a meeting and I see someone who like looks like me, I'm like, oh, we already have something in common. So if you can be that person to go up and maybe find something that's not as obvious as appearances, but, make that genuine interaction of, hey, like I noticed that you're into this or you do this. I've noticed you around a lot. I think you'd be a really great contribution. Like, would you mind, coming to an officer meeting, trying to, figure out somebody's goals and then figure out how you can, support them in that maybe through an officer position is largely how I approach, when I meet with somebody who wants to be a junior officer. They may not, look like me. We may not have anything in common, like right off the bat. But, if I get talking to them and they're like, hey, I would love to do undergraduate research or something like that, then immediately that's, something we have in common and something that kind of ties us together a little bit more personally. Whereas it might be lacking on, like the physical, like I'm a woman, you're a man sort of thing. So if you can make that connection and then also, kind of show interest in them as well as people and maybe explain how your involvement or the organization has gotten to you to where you are now and how you would like to extend that opportunity, I think would be a great way to go about it that makes it more genuine, and then also gives you that connection that otherwise may not seem as apparent with the gender boundary there.
Yeah, I definitely agree with what y'all were saying earlier. Just really making that effort to empower somebody to do something like run for office because it can be really intimidating for a lot of people to do that. So I think finding maybe if there's any particular students that you had in mind or people that maybe your fellow officers know, and just really reaching out and making that connection with people to see if they'd be interested.
For sure. We had that similar situation happen to us. It was a bunch of guys and they all graduated during the pandemic. That's kind of how I just started being an officer. But it wasn't really about gender because at that point it was an all-male board, but we still felt included. And that was just because the officers themselves invited their friends. They made it personable to be inclusive. Representation is great, don't get me wrong. If you can get a female officer, it's even better. But being open and taking their suggestions is definitely a good step. One thing I really like that has happened because of all the social media abuse that we've had because of the pandemic is when they do like officer takeover days and they explain what their roles are and what they have to do. Because I know that when I started, I was super hesitant to apply for anything just because I didn't know what my responsibilities were going to be and what was going to be required of me. That hopefully will get someone interested and you'll have some applicants.
Thank you so much, everyone. And with that being said, we're going to be concluding our meeting. Thank you so much to our panelists for sharing all of your experiences and perspectives. I know I personally have learned a lot. But thanks everyone for attending. We hope to see you at our next meeting.
Like, is you with the Instagram takeover right now?
So nice meeting you. Like, y'all speak all so eloquently. On all of your future members. Thank you.
I am. It's so scary, but so exciting.
Yeah, I know. I'm very excited.